When thinking of the strongest gag characters, I'm sure these two come to mind, Saitama and Saiki. Their names do sound similar, but their personalities are far from it. There is one who broke his limiter and defeats any enemy in one punch, and the other who is trying his best not to one punch everyone by living every day with a limiter on. But the question today is, if these two were to fight, who would win? To answer that, we'll go over their stats and abilities across a range of scenarios to see who is truly the stronger character. But before that, subscribe. The goal is 15k, so if you enjoy, sub up. To start, let's look at Saitama. His entire character is built around the joke that one punch is all it takes. In the Boros fight, when he unleashed the collapsing star roaring cannon, an energy blast stated to be strong enough to wipe the earth clean, Saitama countered this with his serious punch, not only cancelling Boros' planet buster attack, but also obliterating Boros himself, with the shockwave parting clouds across the entire globe. This feat alone comfortably places him at planetary level to start. But Boros was only the warm-up. In the manga's Garou arc, Saitama reaches new heights. His clash with Cosmic Fee Garou results in the serious punch squared, two mirrored punches colliding, and the shockwaves from this strike erase entire star fields from the sky. On a real low ball, this feat is large star level, and a more generous reading puts it in the multi-solar system level to galaxy ranges at best. Later in the same battle, Saitama sneezes so hard that he blows away all of Jupiter's atmospheric gas layers in a single exhale. That alone pushes his destructive scale to multi-planetary plus and reinforces that even his most ridiculous gags manifest as crazy destructive feats. And finally, against awakened Garou, his serious punch shattered Garou's cosmic armor. Garou had copied Saitama's abilities, his power, and even his limitless growth potential, yet Saitama's punch went directly through it. The narrative makes it clear that Saitama had grown so much that he could one-shot every previous version of himself, including the Saitama who nullified Boros' earth-busting cannon and the one who destroyed galaxies with serious punch squared. His AP is portrayed as endlessly compounding, with consistent showings between multi-solar system and multi-galaxy levels, and an argument for universal level power depending on how you interpret Garou's knowledge of all forces statement for the armor, but multi-galaxy level at highest for consistent feats. Now moving on to Saiki. Unlike Saitama, Saiki's powers are usually held back by design. His limiters suppress nearly all of his overwhelming psychic force, but even then, his destructive potential, both physically and psychically, is broken. With the limiters on, he once remarked that even a single restrained punch could obliterate everything in a 7-kilometer radius behind its point of impact. Already a city to country level statement, but his real strength comes from his telekinetic feats. Even with the limiters on, Saiki stopped a planet-ending meteorite that threatened Earth, proving he can prevent extinction-level events even while restrained. And on top of that, he admitted he was about to move the sun itself just because its light was disturbing his sleep. And based on how Saiki narrates his own powers, this isn't hyperbole as well. That places his baseline telekinetic strength at stellar level, even while actively suppressing it, shown with him being in bed while doing it. So, with the limiters on, Saiki is already stellar level, although it would be a lot different if he were actually trying, but we never really get to see that in the series. However, the moment Saiki's limiters come off, the scale of destruction magnifies catastrophically. As a child, only around 9 or 10 years old, Saiki feared that if he flew into the moon, he might accidentally destroy it. By the time he's a teenager, removing one of his limiters creates shockwaves from simple movements. Turning over during his sleep would obliterate his house entirely. In the novel, he even states that removing the limiters makes him at least 100 times stronger. That alone would push his stellar level feats into galaxy level ranges. And you have to remember, that's only the conservative multiplier. With his other abilities, it scales even higher, with his time rewind increasing from 1 day to 7 years, and his telepathy from 200 meters to the entire Earth. but we can keep it at a 100 times boost for now. Next, we can move on to speed, starting with Saitama. During his fight with awakened Garou on Jupiter's moon Io, Saitama performed his omnidirectional serious punch. In this scene, he blitzed across the battlefield, attacking Garou from every angle in the same instant. The manga explicitly shows him leaping across Io's surface so fast that Garou couldn't track or counter. This is one of the best direct showcases of Saitama's raw combat speed, putting him comfortably in the massively faster than light range. There's also the moment where Saitama copies Garou's anti-particle technique to travel back in time, but this is less of a true speed feat and more of a one-off hacks ability he happened to replicate. It's worth noting for completeness, but it doesn't reflect his actual combat or travel speed. Moving on to Saiki's speed. With his limiters on, Saiki has flown from Tokyo to Washington DC in a fraction of a second, a feat calculated at around 7 times the speed of light. Even in this sealed state, he comfortably pushes into FDL plus ranges. On top of that, he has access to teleportation, normally limited to once every 3 minutes, which he can also use offensively. Even in base, Saiki has banished opponents to alternate worlds or isekai dimensions, removing them from the battlefield entirely, which is an underrated ability of his. But when his limiters are removed, Saiki's speed multiplies at least 100 times, boosting him from 7 times the speed of light to well over 700 times the speed of light at minimum. More importantly, his teleportation loses all cooldown restrictions, giving him teleportation without limit. But the real difference is that he isn't confined to planetary or even dimensional travel. Without the limiters, Saiki explicitly has access to travel across parallel universes, although he has to be in his girl form before he goes, as 2 versions of the same person cannot coexist. On top of that, Saiki also possesses time travel through his time leap ability, allowing him to freely travel across time, albeit having to be careful on what he does. Also, his time leap lets him rewind objects or people by up to 24 hours with the limiters, but unsealed, this stretches to 7 years. Combined with his FDL plus speed and parallel universe access, Saiki's mobility extends across space-time itself. Now with speed done, let's move on to Saitama's hacks. For this matchup, we'll need to go over the resistances he has. During his encounter with Tatsumaki, in an attempt to subdue him, Tatsumaki unleashed enough psychic force to throw him into space, but Saitama remained completely unmoved or unharmed, describing the sensation as little more than a massage. But here's where the misconceptions are. Saitama's resistance does not appear to stem from a specific psychic shield or nullification ability. Tatsumaki's power functions by applying immense force to a target. Against Saitama, this force was simply inefficient to affect him. This suggests that he does not negate force-based hacks, but rather tanks it through sheer physical integrity. Also, the force Tatsumaki was applying to Saitama would really be nothing compared to his fight with Boros, which was enough force to push him into space. But in terms of mental resistance, Saitama hasn't faced direct mind control or psychic mind control. However, he remains completely unfazed in every battle, even against cosmic horrors, and is never affected by fear or stress. While this doesn't prove immunity to telepathy or memory rewrite, it does mean psychological pressure wouldn't work as well as it would to others. But the most broken aspect of Saitama is his limitless growth in the heat of battle. The narrator outright states during his fight with Garou that Saitama's power increases exponentially when he experiences strong emotions, somewhat like a Saiyan. In practice, this allowed him to not only surpass Garou, who could copy his ability in real time, but even surpass himself from seconds earlier. Saitama essentially evolves mid-fight faster than his enemies can adapt. So the longer the battle goes on, the stronger he becomes. Now, moving on. Due to the sheer amount of hacks Saiki has, I'll go straight into the matchups and introduce what Saiki can do along the way. But if you want to see a breakdown on how strong Saiki is, I did a video on that, so go check it out after this video. Only after this video. Now, to actually make these two fight, we'll need to think of it in scenarios. So, to start, Due to the personality of Saiki, he's told by Kusuke that if he beats this person called Saitama, he'll get a month's worth of coffee jelly, and the ones that cost 3,000 yen for a single serving. But Kusuke also tells him that he isn't a normal human, so he doesn't need to hesitate to attack him. And also, if he loses this fight, he'll tell the whole world that he's a psychic. Saitama, on the other hand, is also informed that if he beats this quiet hero called Saiki in a fight, he doesn't have to pay rent for the rest of the year, and he also gets a raise. As a baseline, it's safe to say that there is no way Saiki can approach this fight with his limiters on. The only win con for Saiki with his limiters is to simply take off his glasses. And before we go on to say that Saitama won't get affected by it, he is. He has not shown any resistance to an ability as broken as instant pacification. And there are a couple of interpretations of how this ability works, as Saiki has said both any living being caught in his line of sight instantly turns to stone, and also anyone that I make eye contact with will turn into stone. But to make things shorter for this video, we can just assume he needs to make eye contact for petrification. However, as both of them are told they have a prize waiting for them, I don't think Saitama would hesitate to speed blitz Saiki before he takes off his glasses, making Saitama the winner. But if Saitama doesn't move out of the way before he looks at him, Saiki would turn him into stone. So it's probably a 80 to 90% chance Saitama would win with Saiki's limiters on. But now for the real matchup. Saitama versus Saiki without the limiters. First of all, if we're putting these two in the same arena, it can't be on Earth. Saiki's aura alone, once his limiters come off, would be enough to tear the planet apart. However, the moment the battle begins, the two would be moving at speeds massively faster than light. Although, as Saitama merged back to his original timeline self, he would initially be outpaced by Saiki most likely, but he would eventually reach the same level of speed from his constant growth. However, Saiki can teleport without a cooldown. Even with limiters on, he once considered moving the sun itself out of his way. It is also implied that he was about to destroy the sun entirely, with some interpretations from Japanese fans. But his sheer offensive output and speed put him in a league where Saitama can't just laugh it off. But this isn't one-sided. Saitama adapts mid-battle. We've seen him grow so quickly that even an opponent who copied Saitama himself in real time couldn't keep up. So if he gets into a rhythm, even Saiki's telekinetic barrages start to lose their edge. This brings us to the abilities that define the fight. Saiki's petrification is still one of his strongest win conditions, but also there is Saiki's insane mind control, which borders on rewriting reality itself. With limiters off, Saiki can project his will onto the entire planet at once. We've seen this when Saiki once casually altered the world so that buildings could be constructed in weeks instead of years. He decided that clothing should never rip off in sensitive areas, and granted humanity an unspoken rule where clothes would regenerate automatically. He even altered the DNA of all humans, granting them super regeneration from minor injuries and faster cognition under stress. With the limiters gone, any intrusive thought that enters Saiki's mind risks becoming reality. If he wills or thinks Saitama to forget who he is, or to simply not have any strength, or to bring back his limiters to his brain, the laws of reality bend to accommodate it. But Saiki doesn't stop there. His teleportation could banish opponents to alternate worlds, or isekai, essentially removing them from the battlefield. Layer on that with bilocation, and you can create dozens of clones, each with access to the same arsenal, and those clones can bilocate further. Saitama would need to be fighting against many versions of the same person that has access to an insane amount of hacks. If all used at once, that would be way too difficult for him to counter. This includes his time manipulation. With limiters, he could rewind an opponent by a day, but unsealed, he can apply this power repeatedly and stretch it across the 7 years. In a fight, this means Saiki can undo Saitama back to a weaker version of himself, negating his limitless growth effect. But Saitama is Saitama. His own hacks is simple but very effective. His limitless growth against Cosmic Garou, he outgrew both Garou and his own past self in seconds. The longer the fight drags, the faster he climbs, and there's no cap. That's the only real counterweight to Saiki's arsenal. But That's where Saiki's last resort comes in, the sight energy / psi energy feed. In the novel, Saiki and his alternate self matched a metafictional force powerful enough to distort and merge entire stories. If Saiki decides the only way to deal with Saitama's endless growth is to fight on that same meta scale, this ability becomes his trump card. In the novel, it states that Saiki needs 2 versions of himself to perform this feat, but since bilocation was introduced after the novel came out, it proves that if pushed to absolute brink, Saiki has the firepower to counter Saitama with an attack that would essentially erase him from the story they're in. At the end of the day, both of these characters are ridiculous. Saitama has the raw stats, the limitless growth, and the ability to end most fights in a single punch. Against almost anyone, he would be untouchable. But Saiki is a character whose powers aren't bound by durability or strength. With his limitless off, his petrification ignores Saitama's body. His mind control bends reality itself. His teleportation can trap him in an isekai, and even if he fails, the sight energy feed proves he has the firepower to erase him from the very narrative they're fighting him. So, Saiki might be terrified of bugs, and Saitama fights them without a thought. But when it comes to each other, the sidekick scared of bugs is the one person Saitama cannot beat.